Ladies and gentlemen, you're tuned into the I.M.A.G.E TV podcast, and we're here live on location. We've got Ladrina Wilson, and we've got the producer from the film, The First Step Act. We've also got Rome Daring in the house, and then we've got Bob Brown in the house. And me and Bob Brown go all the way back to the prison days at Rockwell. We've got other former inmates, people who are with Families Against Mandatory Minimums. That's right. We're gonna have a great show tonight. Sit back and relax and enjoy the ride.
All right, thank you. So thank you for that. When you turn on, you really turn on. So the other fun fact I want to share, because we're not stopping here, right? This is a continuous conversation. We have a lot of work to do. And like I said, it's small but mighty. Well, we could and should pack this room. So I anticipate we'll make an effort to come back. But y'all, Iowa City showed out. They had more people in that theater than they did when Elvis, the premiere of Elvis, the film came out.
Yep.
So it was a packed crowd, and I think we can do the same here in Des Moines. So hopefully you gain something from this experience, share it out with others, and we can maybe make it happen again. Cool. With that, I will dim the lights and get us started.
99% of the people we prosecute are truly actually guilty of the crime for which they're prosecuted. The purpose of sentencing is to punish, to deter, to incapacitate, and yes, to rehabilitate.
No, but it's so important. Listen, you spend most of your time, even up there, talking about punishing people and deterring people, incapacitating people. We can do a better job, and we should do a better job on rehabilitation.
If we pass this legislation, we'll be paying more and getting less than we currently have. How does that make sense?
I want you to meet Lewis.
My name is Lewis.
Federal or state?
Federal.
Federal?
Yes.
Let me see your pre-sentence report. Let me see your pre-sentence report, then you and I can have a meaningful conversation, because so many people talk about their circumstances, and
you haven't even listened to them.
I know, but
you can't just throw somebody in a category and not listen. It's not fair.
But you as a journalist need to see his pre-sentence report.
And you as a human being need to listen to a human being. Are you a father?
I am far much more than something that has been written about me. I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm a son, I'm a licensed clinician in the state of Connecticut. I have a master's degree in clinical counseling. I have a bachelor's degree in psychology, and I also have a bachelor's degree in criminal justice, all of which I earned while I was incarcerated. Now, however...
Isn't that a terrific thing? In the federal system, you learned all those things?
However...
Is that right?
Yes, but here's the caveat. I did not earn those things by way of the institution subsidizing my education. I learned those things, and I had the great fortune of being educated and matriculating through university because I was subsidized by my family and friends, and I shouldn't be exceptionalized. I take these conversations back to the people who are on the inside, and I tell them that there are people who don't want you to come home.
Let's stay together.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
So maybe I'll kick things off while Lance is kind of moving around, because Lance is, we'll do some self-introductions, but I will talk a little bit about Lance because he's quite modest. I've had the opportunity now to watch the film several times, and each time I find a new element that I'm interested in terms of the cinematography, the approach. It is an art. It is very much a documentary, but there's different interpretations that you can take when it's presented in certain forms. And I'm appreciative for the producing that you did, the effort that you did to put this together, to get the word out there about what the First Step has done in our community, in our country, specifically, I want to say in the Black community, in terms of reuniting families. So thank you so much for your willingness to make this a passion and a love, and to give back to the community in this way. So I appreciate that. Can we give Lance a round of applause? So with that, I'll share. I'm Ladrina Wilson. I serve as the Empathy Network lead here for the state of Iowa with Dream Corps Justice. Dream Corps is an organization that is committed to criminal justice reform, primarily at the federal level, but we also, Dream Corps also has branches in green initiatives, as well as tech industry, and creating opportunities for Black and brown folks in the tech industry. So I came in partnership with Dream Corps and was introduced to Dream Corps through Lewis, actually. We were both speakers at a conference, and he started talking to me a little bit about what Dream Corps was about, and I was intrigued and wanted to get involved. And I can talk on and on about that, but for now, that's how I got involved. And then I'll let these fine gentlemen over next to me kind of do their self-introductions.
Sure. First of all, thanks again for having us here. It's been a real honor to work with you. We only met each other for the first time in person on Tuesday, and it feels like we've already known each other much longer. So it's been a really extraordinary week. And as Ladrina said, my name is Lance Kramer. I produced the film. My brother, Brandon Kramer, directed the film. And there were, I lost count of how many people worked on the film. There was, I think, over 100 people over the course of the 5 years that it took to make the film that worked on it in some respect, just filmmakers, let alone other people that were a part of it. So it's probably well over 100 if you go beyond the filmmakers, but it really was, I appreciate you saying it was, you felt, you experienced it as a piece of art. That's certainly how we kind of approach our work. I know documentaries aren't always seen that way because they can kind of be seen as news or propaganda or any number of different things. I think we try to recognize that we're not journalists, we're filmmakers, we're storytellers, we're trying to make a piece of art that can be felt and interpreted in all kinds of ways, and so I think that's part of the joy of being able to share it too, is to hear how it lands for different people. But also we feel very accountable to accuracy and to the truth, and go through a pretty rigorous process to make sure that that's the case, at least to the best of our abilities. I'm from DC. I live in Washington, D.C. I was born there. I grew up in Maryland. And then have lived in DC for the past 15 years. This is what I do for a living. So this is our second feature film. Our first film was called City of Trees. It came out about 6 years ago. And so these films take a long time, take about 5-6 years to make. And I've worked on a number of short films as well, or short projects, but producing these features is really, my heart and soul passion.
That's good. My name is Bobby Pate. I'm from here, Des Moines, Iowa, and I'm the president and founder of I.M.A.G.E for Lives. I.M.A.G.E stands for Inmate Movement Against Gang Evolution. And after serving 11 straight years for nonviolent drug convictions, possession with intent to deliver crack cocaine, I particularly find this film to be very interesting. So, again, I thank you for producing it, making it, bringing it to light. A lot of people need to see that. There's also some other lessons in here I see that can be learned, kind of what you have to fight for, what you have to go through, how you do things, and how you stand your ground and who you are, when you're doing them. The winner was in the end when those inmates were being released and they came home. That was the big picture of it all. Why would somebody try to stop that? Just because you have to work with a Republican, or you have to work with somebody racist. You shouldn't let that stop you. Still from helping, especially helping your own people. So, there's just a lot of lessons in there to be learned, and I gained a lot from it.
Well, I'm glad you were able to gain that from it. I think a lot of people want to hold the line on whatever is important to them, and sometimes you can lose sight of the bigger picture, right? Yeah. I think there were so many different things that resonated with me, and we want to hear from you all too, but I really connected with kind of this whole, how do you operate, even within the Black community as a Black leader trying to affect change, and how sometimes that can be, you're not going to make everybody happy, but you certainly don't want to let your own people down. And sometimes that can be the biggest challenge, quite frankly.
Yeah. I mean, for me, growing up right here in Des Moines, Iowa, you know, there was community leaders like Rome Darren, you know, guys that have actually been in prison. Then you have people like Wayne Ford, you know, that actually went through the steps of going through the legal procedures of helping people, you know, getting a nonprofit organization, getting it established, filing your organization with the Secretary of State. You know, those are all the different little channels that you have to go through. And, you know, I see community leaders kind of in two different ways. You know, it can be somebody that had been in prison and had served 25 years and was someone who was in prison educating himself and learning, just like the gentleman on that film.
Lewis.
Yeah. And so, you know, I learned from all different sides. You know, that's what I loved about that film. It showed a lot of versatility.
Mr. Jerome?
Yeah, I would like to speak to a subject that I think is relevant to the grassroots organizations that are out here advocating for prison reform and changing some of the laws. Now, I want to speak to it from a historical perspective, because I think all people need to be informed. You can put it down there. All people need to be informed as far as the application of legislation. And unfortunately, we jump on the bandwagon after the fact when there's a movement afoot that's dealing with what we consider to be unfair or not equal or injustice. The crack law was manifested in 1987 with the United States Sentencing Guidelines, 1987. And I went to federal prison in 1987. And it was created based upon a deception, as the law later revealed in 1994 and 1995, when opponents of the 100-to-1 ratio came out against the disparity in sentencing. Prior to that revelation, Congress created bills in the United States Sentencing Guidelines that made crack 100 times more potent than cocaine. But anybody in the right mind would clearly understand that when you create cocaine, it comes out at 98%. That's the purest it can get. And any chemist would testify to that. But being relatively poor, you don't have the type of representation in a court of law, especially federal, where you can have experts come in and testify that there's no sodium bicarbonate never made cocaine 100 times more powerful than cocaine. But they got this off. And the same legislators that you've seen on this film supported that 100-to-1 ratio. Not only European lawmakers, African American lawmakers supported that. And that was brought to their attention to support that bill because of all the violence that was raging in the 80s. Wayne Ford was very active during that particular point in time in creating his programs to combat the problems that Des Moines was suffering during that particular period of time. And I give him all due honor for that. But with that being said, I want to speak to the fact that when you look at legislation, when you're advocating for sentencing reform, you got to understand the history of the laws. Our problem in our society is most people don't understand it. They jump on the bandwagon because it's popular to get on the bandwagon. But you got to understand the history. So we're sitting up here, we give honor to Van Jones. I've communicated with Van Jones throughout the 25 years that I spent in federal prison recently. And but the whole key to legislation is this here. You can pass legislation, but anything that's passed in Congress, if you don't look at the fine print and understand that any legislation that's passed is still subject to discretion. So once you pass a law, the judge still has discretion to grant you that relief. So just because they passed the law doesn't mean that you're going to be or benefit from that particular law, because you got to go back before the judge to sentence you. He gets to look at your record, and it's in his discretion on whether or not you get that relief. So there was a lot of people that didn't benefit from the First Step Act. Now Trump, I give all due praise to Trump, despite what everybody might think about him. Barack Obama, he passed the Fair Sentencing Act in 2010. That assisted a lot of people in 2010. It didn't assist me. I still did another 10 years after he passed that law because he didn't take it a step farther. Trump come in because he was trying to get reelected and said, well, I'm gonna pass this bill because it's gonna help a lot of the African-American families and Hispanic families, and I might get some votes from that sector. Let's keep it real. So, but yet and still, in the passage of that bill, he didn't eliminate the judge's discretion. So it doesn't matter what Trump or Congress or anybody else does. If you don't eliminate discretion, some people want to get it and some people are not. 90% of the people that cooperate with the government are going to get it. The 10% that don't cooperate with the government is not going to get it. So you had still people in prison that had 30 years, life, and on for a nonviolent offense, a drug offense, nonviolent, doing 30-year sentences and life sentences. I was at the end of my sentence. I benefited only by 18 months. I did 25 straight calendars for 7.9 grams of cocaine because I went to jury trial. I invoked my constitutional right because they wanted to say, because I'm an African-American man, I was dealing in crack cocaine. I said, nay, I'm from the old school. I dealt in cocaine, and I'll take my weight for cocaine, but I didn't deal in crack cocaine. But being ignorant to a degree, without knowledge of the chemical aspect of controlled substances, I couldn't put forth the articulation that I needed to put forth to defend that particular principle in a court of law. But that's neither here nor there. I learned a lot while I was in prison, so I don't begrudge the time I spent in prison. But with that being said, my point is I think that people that are advocating for sentencing reform and things of that nature, and you never heard Van Jones or anybody else on that video speak to the fact that when legislation is afoot, you have to look at the fine print. Anything that deals with an amendment in law is still subject to the discretion of the court. We have to look at our court system, our criminal court system, and we're not looking at that. Disparity is not created through the law. Disparity is not written in the law. They stopped that in 1886. This is 1900s, 2022. So they don't write discriminatory laws anymore. They used to in the 1800s, but they don't do it no more. So judges get to apply their discretion when considering a person for relief. If in fact a person invokes their constitutional right, their chances of getting out of prison is slim and none, even though they're serving a nonviolent offense. So as you go forward from this point, and you talk to people like Grassley, go back and look at Grassley's 1984 drug task bill that he put forth. I hear people supporting Grassley. I don't support Grassley. He has never done anything for my nationality of people, so I don't support him. But with that being said, don't take my bias toward Grassley. Look at his legislation before you get out there and support him so that you will understand exactly who you're dealing with. Grassley, if in fact the Republican gets voted to the highest office during the next term, will once again become the head of the Judicial Committee in the Senate. And he's a very powerful man, and that power will subject reform to his whim. McConnell's the same way. You know, the individuals that were showed on that film, they've been in Congress for 30 years or better, most of them. And they all supported harsher punishment. Federal incarceration, the boom in federal prison building is an $80 billion business. So they're not going to be inclined to let everybody out of prison when you are making that type of money. Now, when you're dealing with those type of films, my issue is a lot of the individuals that speak have never spent a day in federal prison. So when you speak to something, you need to know what you're speaking about. And most people speak from the perspective of the narrative that is given to them. But you've never been in federal prison, so you can't speak to what actually goes on in federal prison. I started doing time in 1975. I got out of prison in 2020. You know, think about that. So with that being said, my concern is only that when people advocate for prison reform, that they understand the legislation, they understand the role that the judges play, and they understand the role that the prosecutors play. And the United States sentencing guidelines have restricted judges, and judges are more inclined. Most judges that are judges are former federal prosecutors. It's a fraternity. And so all these elements come into play, and people don't understand that. And it's critical when you're dealing with prison reform that you understand the intricate details that go into the fair administration of justice. And so, again, with that being said, that's why a lot of the disparity comes about. Now, I'm not opposed to people going to prison. Don't get it twisted. I mean, you have some heinous people in prison, people that do all kinds of things. So I'm not opposed to prisons. I think some people deserve to be in prison. I think I deserve to be in prison for selling cocaine. 10 years would have been enough time for me, not 30. You dig what I'm saying? For 7.9 grams. Come on, man. But with that being said, I wanted to speak to that because I know that most advocates out here are not speaking to the fact that judges have so much discretion on who gets relief and who doesn't. So as people go forward in their advocacy for prison reform, you need to look at that word, discretion. And that word needs to be eliminated. When a bill is passed, you need to take the discretion out of it, because not all judges are alike, you know. And
or fair.
Huh?
Or fair, for that
That's
matter.
right,
And,
that's
and
right,
when we were
that's
in
right.
Iowa City
And we're not
yesterday,
looking at that.
it was
So-
the same conversation yesterday, actually. They were talking about how what happens in Kentucky in terms of how the First Step is administered or executed is different than Iowa, or it just depends on where you're at and what judge you get.
That's
and
right.
that is not equitable or
That's right,
fair.
that's right. It has to be eliminated from that consideration. Anybody that's serving a sentence that's considered draconian under the concepts of fair and equal, that should be applied across the board. I give Trump all due praise. Don't get it twisted, because if it don't be for Trump, then I do another 18 years in prison. So I have to give him honor for passing that bill, whatever his motives might be. You know, I'm not a Republican. I can't vote, none of that. But if it don't be for Trump, I don't ever get out of prison. So I have to give him honor for that. But again, I would hope going forward, as you continue to put forth the film, which I thought was a very compelling film, that people that, you know, haven't shared my experience understand the basic concept of the criminal justice system. I mean, it's more intricate than what, you know, a lot of people would think. It's not what you think it is. You know, you have constitutional rights. When I was going to school as a young man, you know, we learned about our constitutional rights. Most people in the United States now don't even know what their rights are. So when you go up in a court of law, you're dependent on this lawyer to represent you. But again, you know, it takes finances to get good representation. You know, if you ain't got no money, you're going to get a court-appointed attorney, and you're not going to get the fair benefit of the law when you get a court-appointed attorney. I'm sorry to say that, but that's just the way it is. I mean, it's a system, it's a profitable system, and despite what, you know, most people might think, I mean, you know, people out here, you know, again, committing crimes, and I don't oppose a punishment for a crime that somebody has committed. I think people should, you know.
I think it's not necessarily about whether we should abolish, you know, the prison system, although there are some people who feel that way, right? I think the bigger picture that I hear from what you're saying is there's so many areas within the criminal justice system that need attention, right? Whether it's on the policing side, whether it's on the prosecutory side, whether it's on the discretion, conspiracy. We talked about that. The definition of what makes you a co-conspirator. Somebody can just put your name in something, and now, there's so many parts of the criminal justice system, reentry. There's so many parts that are broken, right? And so, I had been saying, people who have been, formerly incarcerated or justice impacted, and it's like, I'm starting to wonder if it's justice. They're part of a system, because it ain't always just, right? And so, when you shared, your background, my first reaction was, we need to hear from you, and that's part of what drew me to my work with Dream Corps, is because they care about the voices of the people who are systems impacted, whether it's those folks who have been formerly incarcerated, whether it's the children of people who have been incarcerated, whether it's the victims who are now advocating for criminal justice reform. It's a very dynamic organization, and there's lots of opportunities for improvements all across the board.
And that's the reason why I give Mr. Pate so much credit, because he lends that medium to people who have been formerly incarcerated to get out and tell their story. So as far as Des Moines is concerned, it has been a great impact in our community, because he allows people that come out of prison to tell their story. So the people in the community are getting a version of events that has transpired through their experiences while they're in prison. Like I said, I've been in 25 federal prisons in the United States over my last quarter of a century in prison. So, and you don't have a federal prison in Des Moines, Iowa, or in Iowa, period. So you travel all over the country, Well,
and the First Step Act changed that too. So it's 500. It's 500 miles or
that's
or
not
less.
true. They changed it to a degree, and see, you have to read the fine print in there. If a person gets in trouble while they're in federal prison, that 500 radius that you're talking about is eliminated, because they can send them anywhere once you get in trouble, in prison.
Right.
And a lot of people get in trouble in prison. They have to go to other prisons outside of that particular state, which might be close to their home, for their protection or for the protection of somebody else.
Yeah.
So that doesn't necessarily,
yeah, well, and I think the film points out that change is incremental, right? Like, we're not going to, if we wait for whole cloth change, most often it's not going to happen. Is there anybody, I just want to make sure everybody that has a question or has a specific thing that they'd like to share has an opportunity to. Are there any other reactions to the film or thoughts that you want to share? I know, Bobby, you probably want to talk a little bit about what you have going on, but want to hold space for the people who may have questions.
Yeah, most definitely. Well, I know that Brother Bob Brown back there in the back has been, when I was in Rockwell Correctional Facility, Bob was able to offer an outlet for people coming out of prison, people that were getting involved in apprenticeship programs. Now, of course, we're in Iowa, so you have to look at what's available, which is not really appealing to me. And I say that because I'm not in apprenticeship. I'm not a plumber, I'm not a farmer, a lot of that stuff. But for the people who it did, help, I thought that was good. So, it's good to see those people who are still active and still come back and still stay involved. Like I say, women that have been incarcerated, they see a whole different side than men do. We've only got one state prison in Iowa for women, and we got 8, 9 for men. That speaks volume right there when you look at other states. We don't actually figure in those factors and talk about that either. That's another whole issue by itself. But dealing with the stuff that I seen him Vance dealing with is the Republican and Democrat stuff, going against that, Republican, Democrat, if you're a Democrat, you're this way, if you're a Republican, you're this way. I never bought into that. I did growing up, but then after I started learning to educate myself, I wasn't gonna go on this side or I wasn't gonna go on this side. I was gonna support what I felt was right. And so, you know, by doing that, it puts me at bipartisan. So, you know, I always put on a lot of my posts. I don't vote for the party. I vote for the people. So, you know, if I see someone standing on something or doing something that I feel is right, you know, I support that. And it's kind of confusing to some people, maybe, if you think about it, but it is what it is.
I want to give another perspective. Back in the 80s, I'm from Southeast Washington, D.C. So you already know how I grew up. Okay, I had a black man like me get from Southeast out here. I played football. I was robbing. My first bus I robbed at 13 years old. But then I was a good athlete, so I got a football scholarship. And I told them to get me father's way from D.C., so they put me out there in the fifth whitest state. So in 1969, I got a football scholarship to Rochester, Minnesota. Then I got a football scholarship to Drake. And I've been here for 50 years. So already know, I'm that guy that grew up in Southeast. When I first came here, my mentality was take, kill, whatever. But that's how I grew up. All my friends were Deloitte. You know what I'm talking about. So if I had to stick somebody, hurt somebody, it would not have mattered to me. So that's when I went to school. I carried my pistol. I'm a football player. My coach said, Wayne, if I knew you had a gun, I never would have played you. I had a gun in my gym bag. I'm a black man from D.C. This is 1969. You figure it out. You can kill me, but I'm going to shoot back. That's how I grew up. Because of that mentality, that helped me. And those who've been here know my reputation, know what I've done. This man right here, we go way back. I was the first guy to start hiring ex-offenders in the 80s. And the only reason why that happened because if I didn't play football, there go me. Now, so there's the ball again. That's in the 80s. I've been in Iowa all these years, and I watch all these bills, and I watch some stuff. I watch people with good intentions, but the bottom line is they don't want to be nowhere near brothers like them. Black people don't want to stand next to these two guys who are from Des Moines. So I'm looking at it from a guy from D.C. So what I did was I created my own stuff. When I see things, I create stuff. I create urban dreams. I just gave it to a younger kid now. I'm 70. I did urban dreams when I was in my 30s. But I gave it to him because I wanted him to be able to carry on that legacy to help people. So I believe you got to, number one is to help ex-offenders. You can't be scared of ex-offenders. And most people are scared of ex-offenders. Let's cut through the bullshit. Most people are scared of female ex-offenders because they got that word ex-offender. It ain't about color, black or white. If ain't a white ex-offender think that white people are not comfortable around him, I got some land in Georgia. Give me a break. So the bottom line is this. But my realness have got me to where I'm at now. I served 14 years on Capitol Hill. So how did a gun-carrying athlete in college who started his own nonprofit in Des Moines, that's still here 40 years later, and became a black legislator, and was the only black legislator for 6 years out of 150 white people. There's only one, and I talk to you the way I talk now. Anybody knows my vocabulary has not changed. So what I'm trying to say in so many words, Iowa was a place for me to grow. Van Jones been here twice. I know Van Jones. My son knows Van Jones. Great person. Everybody plays their part. Van Jones plays his part. I play my part. That said is, this is tremendous right here. But that was a little while ago. The country has changed since then. So I'm glad that y'all two have connections. But until you can hear his story, and white people's stories, I hope we got some white ex-offenders in there. So until we can hear their stories, then everybody's still gonna be scared. No one wants to sit next to him. So I spent my whole career. I hired them. They worked for me on Capitol Hill. My assistant on Capitol Hill was Dennis Ashby. So I've had ex-offenders on Capitol Hill who was sitting right next to me. So you won't see my kind again, especially in the fifth whitest state. So what I want you all to do, and that's why I came here, because he got me out. You see I got this on right here. I've been in the hospital because I got a bad neck and I had a fall. But hear me well. But I came here because of my love for him. And also to meet whoever is doing their job. To call you out if you're not doing it right. To recognize until we get this thing going about equity and fair play and sentencing. He mentioned discretion, I got that. As Representative Wayne Ford, I signed the bill that made it. I didn't know this because sometimes I got confused. I signed 2 bills I wish I did. I signed one bill that if you get in a killing and you kill somebody, those people around you will get the same amount of time. Now, I signed that because, I mean, again, I don't care if you're black or white. I'm a lawmaker. I signed the bill. Years later, I recognized, man, I shouldn't have done that.
Was that felony murder?
I think it was. But it was, if you know, the same thing happened with these kids who killed the kid in school over there at East or the school. All those kids are going, they get
Felony
life.
murder.
Yeah, and everybody couldn't pull the trigger at the same time.
Right.
But I signed that bill. So I get a chance to look, so now I get a chance to look back on my life. And all I hope is that he could continue telling his story, you could continue telling your story, that white ex-offenders begin talking just as aggressively as black ex-offenders and Latino ex. We need everybody talking. Because right now, all these TV shows I see and everything, I always see black and Latino ex-offenders. I never see white folks talking. And there's more white folks locked up than the minorities. But they never talk. And I'm sure they don't get along in the joint that well. If I can be candid, give me a break. Oh, shit, I can't, come on, man. Don't make, at 70 years old, I'm free. So understand what I'm saying? So I'm glad y'all got your team together. I'm here to assist this individual to help you and to do anything I can. But I kind of know a lot of people from Obama or down to the man on TV. I know everybody. And I love beating people up if they ain't got their shit together.
Thank you, thank you.
And with that, you pass.
Any other thoughts or reflections that you want to share
Thank
or
you.
questions that you may have?
Well, okay. I tend to open up a whole can of worms, and I'm going to ask that when I speak, you're not going to like my topic because it is excluded from the First Step Act, and it is made very well known that nobody with this crime is to be accepted. We put so much hatred and there's really zero understanding. I'm not, I have not had a presence inside the prison, but I actually represent those that are on the registry. We do not understand anybody with a sex crime, period, end of story. It's, oh, we don't want to talk to you, kind of. I had when I learned of the First Step Act, I reached out to Senator Grassley. My husband is serving a federal sentence for an internet crime. He's an automatic heinous monster. Automatic. Nobody wants to hear his story. Nobody wants to hear how he became this heinous monster, and nobody wants to hear that he was a child who was molested by 4 family members. I myself am a rape by gunpoint survivor. I am proud to represent those on the registry because if anybody would want a registry, it would be me, and I don't. I see a mental health problem. The amount of sex that we have going on in our digital world. I'll take it a step further. I'm an educator. I possibly could lose my job soon when my husband is released. I have reached out to Governor Reynolds. I reached out to Zach Nunn. I've reached out to Brian LaHosie to say, hey, I am an in-demand substitute in my school district. I almost got slaughtered this year because I was teaching secondary kids about what's on the internet. The sad part is the statistics, the dangers, sorry, the dangers of what's on the internet, which stemmed in a biology class when the word anus came up. Okay, you're in a high school class. I had to rein it in, I had to reel it in as the substitute, but I took it as an opportunity to teach our children because we do not talk about sex. Sex is rampant. I can't tell you how many times I've had a student walk out of class, come back in, and they connected with another student in a bathroom. And I had to go, oh, that was on my watch? You did what? We don't talk about sex, but yet it is vilified. I want to know why. Why is it excluded from the First Step Act? Why are we only focusing on drugs? And we need to. We need to start talking about all. Because if I'm going to represent a registry here in Iowa, We just launched, this is my advocacy partner. I'm sure she's like, don't put me on the spot.
No, I'm fine.
I'm more of the outspoken one to say we need to talk about sex. It's not an addiction. I mean, it is an addiction. It is not founded, it's not recognized by the Psychology Association as an addiction, yet having an orgasm produces just as much dopamine as a shot of heroin. But we won't talk about it. So, I mean, and the sexual content. I was introduced to sexual content before I knew what a healthy relationship was with sexual content. Playboy magazines. I mean, the children today are, I was called a pedophile in class, in a 6th grade classroom, because I picked up a young man's glasses and was being fun with the kids, which is what I am. And a young man said, "You're a pedophile." All right. Well, if you know me, we're gonna talk. You want to go there as an educator? I'm gonna go there. Anyways, I can rabbit trail with the best of them. I would like to see us start talking about sex. We are not doing anything to prevent it. We are only doing everything to vilify it. When 1 in 5 girls and 1 in 7 boys are molested, why do these people have to stay in their stigma, stay in their pain? My husband, who was given a link, who he asked twice in this adult chat room, in an adult chat line, is this illegal? And they told him no twice. Anybody in your addiction, I don't care if it's gambling, cutting, drugs, food, alcohol, you had a green light, and my husband was no different. What happened next is what we don't have in place, sir, and I'm gonna talk to you because you represent our legislation. Where was my husband to go when he clicked on that link and it was rapid fire download of child pornography? Any man, you just said how many men prisons we have here versus men versus women prisons. If my husband was to have gone, say this was his phone, and gone into a police department and said, "I had this happen," he's automatically met with handcuffs. He's automatically labeled a heinous monster, and we're just going to go ahead and just slap the books at you. When his psychiatrist said, "You are a man who needs help," and between his state and federal arrest, this proactive wife here had him in Sex Addicts Anonymous. We do not talk about that enough. He also was in counseling to address his molestations. And the psychiatrist said, "You are not a prison candidate, but our laws are written that you are going to go away to prison," when really you have mental health in place, and we're going to ignore that.
Well, I mean, I know that just in reality, we see those kind of offenses, you know, everyone views them different. It's just the way the world is, right?
Sure.
Just like the way crack cocaine versus powder cocaine,
Absolutely.
you know, is. It takes somebody like we've just witnessed, you know, to step out and start talking and start saying something. You know, you got like, I mean, that's the only way you make things happen, is to stand out and start doing it.
And we went to Senator Grassley's office.
You might have to go more than Senator Grassley.
Well, we went to Senator Ernst's office.
Might have to go more than her.
We are doing our best because there is a way to stop the internet. And the internet and sex crimes have taken over the war on drugs.
Yeah, it has. You're absolutely right.
Absolutely. Sex is the fastest rising crime, and we have zero in place.
Right.
You take a country like Germany. What does Germany have? The most proactive country, and we could use them as a model country. They have billboard signs that say, "Have you been molested? Are you looking at child pornography? Have you been sex trafficked? Let's get you help." And it's not met with handcuffs. It's met with a plan. You passed your psych eval. I want you doing this, and you're still allowed to be in society, but you're going to address your stuff. This psych eval comes back and says you're not safe to be in society. We're going to put you in a place and we're gonna monitor you, and we're gonna make you get help. But nonetheless, it's met with help. It's not met with handcuffs. And there's no help for this crime in prison.
And I think you know, your advocacy work and the work that everybody has a lane, right?
Right.
And to your point, it's like you have to keep beating the drum. And that might be your drum, and somebody else's drum might be drug felony convictions, and
Sure.
somebody else's drum might be, you know, there's just so many issues. They're all rooted in social issues, though,
Sure,
right?
sure.
And so, you know, I appreciate at least being able to hold space for those conversations and understanding that everybody's got a role to play, right? And it's not enough to just think about it. You have to create an action plan, whatever that may be. And so I hold space for that and solidarity in that, but also recognize that it takes a certain level of courage too to even be able to have those conversations, right? Because it, like you said, it's something that it's understood, but nobody is eager to talk about, right?
Well, I was eager.
So
I shared with you.
Yeah.
I'm involved with FAM, Families Against Mandatory Minimums. I have been the first and only person to do a storytelling piece. So if you go on FAM's website, you will see my story on there. And I was also a guest on their Hard Cases segment that was aired last May. If you just Google my name, Heather Wagner, my FAM piece should come up. But I was in a podcast with two other ladies. We were talking about a second chance agenda, and these two other guests were talking about their loved ones who had committed a murder. So the three of us connected in that group to be that voice. So yes, but I agree.
I know that Chuck Grassley, you brought his name up. You said that you met with him, and his staff, yeah, and you know he should be holding, you know, his Christian values in place when it comes to that, as you know, he says that he does, and he does in a lot of areas. So you know that could be an area that he's lacking in, and he needs to step his game up because if you stand on those
you got it.
Christian values, you know, like he does, and he, you know, says he does. So, you know, that's one thing that I think you should use. You should bring that to his attention because he could be at fault there, and if you bring it to the light, maybe it could change things. Just like, you know, how you've seen Vance continue to keep beating the drum. You know, you can't stop. And the worst thing that you could do is get upset and angry at another bill because, you know, you feel it's similar to the one that should be passed in what you're trying to fight.
Well, and it's the incremental thing, right? It's like you can't do everything at once. So where do you start? So for the purpose of time, and I think they want us to make sure we're able to let the housekeeping in here. Grassley's name has been mentioned a number of times, and I would be remiss if I didn't tell you a little bit about the Equal Act. We know what the First Step Act is. Its name is very intentional. It is the first step of more action to come. And the Equal Act is really an effort to move the disparity from 18-1 down to 1-1 for some of the very reasons that you mentioned. And so with that, right now, it has passed in the House with overwhelming bipartisan support, and it is hung up in the Senate. There are co-sponsors, 11 co-sponsors, both Republican and Democrat, for the bill. But one of the hang-ups has been the lack of support from our senators here in Iowa, in part with Chuck Grassley being a ranking member and in the Judiciary Committee. And so what we've been doing, for those folks who want more information, I have a letter that we've prepared where we're just simply asking Senator Ernst and Senator Grassley to consider co-sponsoring the Equal Act. We are not wholeheartedly confident that will happen, but we want them to know that Iowa wants to be part of reform. We want them to know that Iowa wants to play a role in making a difference. Currently, Iowa is one of 10 states that still has a disparity 40 other states have gone to 1-to-1 at the state level. Iowa is currently at 2.5-to-1. But we realized that the way that it got to 100-to-1 was not based on research. It was based on hysteria. And so we are, now that we have more information and more data about what the substance is, what it does to a person, we want to make it whole and make it right, and where there's equity in that. Here and here. Did you raise your hand? Yes, sure. Yeah.
So I just wanted to say thank you for doing this. This is amazing. I'm in campaign season and I had to leave because I wanted to make sure I got here tonight. As soon as I saw the title and I saw the promo that you guys did the other day, yeah, this is amazing. And it really is, it's really indicative of how legislation works. I know this looks like, this is one bill, and you needed, we saw mainly Van, but I mean, he was the main driver, but there was also other drivers, and they had to be engaged for a long time. And, he's got 12 other jobs that he's doing, right? And these other people have 12 other jobs, and it really took somebody with passion. And I can relate to all those, some of those, dude, you're not representing. Well, I gotta go. You're not gonna get this right now. And this group or this constituency thinks you sold out. And this constituency, so I just applaud not only the movie, but also the people behind the movie. And then you guys documenting all this. This is just amazing. So should be very encouraging to everybody to talk to your legislators about whatever's passionate to you. And you may not get there today, as Dr. King said, but it's just be encouraged that it's not a all or nothing today or we failed. It's just a good starting point.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to say, just also in response to everything that was shared, I really appreciate just all the also personal, perspectives that you all brought into the space. I know I can only imagine how courageous and just how courageous it is to share all that. And I really appreciate what you all have shared. And it's heartbreaking to hear, because it's like the society has failed on so many levels, and then, as you said, the system has also failed on so many levels, and so then that leaves us also, it's very easy to just be hopeless or just to throw our hands up and say there's nothing that can be done. Where do you start? And you try to fix one corner and it's whack-a-mole, because then 100 other corners are so messed up. And so I guess maybe just I would leave it as a question, maybe to walk away from also the experience of having seen the film, is are there things that, especially in kind of hearing each other, that resonate across the room, up and down, that you see opportunities for kind of lateral moves together. And I hope that maybe that's one takeaway that could resonate from the film and the story, is that kind of what you see happening is people that were brought to the table from different angles, both not just race, but also the issue and the impact. People who were impacted first through addiction, but not incarceration, and then people who were impacted by incarceration, but did not get any sort of attention for the addiction, kind of finding some point of commonality in their pain, and that the pain that they shared wound up creating some power. And it's not perfect and it's not messy. It's certainly very messy, but if there's anything in that could be useful, particularly in any of the struggles that people in the room are facing, I just hope that might just be instructive in some way.
Yeah. All right, we are getting close to 9:30. I think we're going to wrap things up. If you have not signed the clipboard that's going around, please do. We want to stay in contact. We want to stay communicating, and so we will reach back out to you. I will hang back just a little bit if anybody has any questions. But otherwise, thank you so much for joining us this evening. You could have been anywhere else, including in the bed, in cozy pants, which is what I would normally be doing right around now. But we're here together in solidarity, and so thank you for that.
Thank you.
I.M.A.G.E TV podcast, and we've had a wonderful time. Episode 39. I encourage you all to take heed to this episode. It was very, very educational, very encouraging. I got my main man, Eddie Andrews, right here, came to support tonight. Eddie, what'd you think of that?
This is amazing. I got to tell you, I think everyone in Iowa certainly needs to see this, and really everyone who is interested in helping our justice system and having any kind of reform effort, they need to see this film.
And this is the main man here who produced the film, who actually put it out there. That was awesome work. Can you tell everyone your name and a little bit about what it took to make this happen?
Yeah, sure. I really appreciate you having me here and for coming out and supporting the film. My name is Lance Kramer. I'm an independent filmmaker from Washington, D.C. I produced the film, which is called The First Step, which we were watching tonight. Tonight was the third screening in the state of Iowa. We were in Davenport on Tuesday, we were in Iowa City last night, and then here in Des Moines tonight. Iowa is the 26th state that we've taken the film across the country since the premiere back in Tribeca last year. And it's a film that took 5 years, took a lot of blood, sweat, and tears to put it together. And it's just been a real honor to program the film, especially with people who are activists and advocates in the community.
Thank you so much. Eddie Andrews, thank you for coming out.
God bless.
I.M.A.G.E TV podcast, episode 39. Tune in on YouTube. We'll see you there.
It's good. It's good.
TV, baby.